I found a very strange shaped cube with some markings of different values on it, but I can't figure out what it was for. Any ideas what it could be used for? The object you found is a bartender's jigger, specifically a modern geometric version of the traditional measuring tool used in cocktail preparation. Unlike the classic hourglass-shaped jiggers with two opposing cones, this variation is designed as a cube with angled wells, each marked with specific measurements such as 1 ounce, 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces, and so on. Each face of the cube corresponds to an exact volume, allowing bartenders to pour spirits quickly and accurately when mixing drinks. Jiggers have been an essential part of professional bartending since at least the late 1800s. The term jigger originally referred to a small measure of liquor, but over time it came to describe the tool itself. Early jiggers were commonly made from pewter or silver. Modern versions, like the one in your photo, are typically made from stainless steel for durability, ease of cleaning, and a sleek appearance behind the bar. Walking in the park with a friend, we found this item. It perfectly fits in each other and there was some sort of liquid in it. Any ideas what this is? The object you found is a two-piece herb grinder, commonly used for grinding dried herbs, spices, or plant material. Each half has a set of sharp, diamond-shaped teeth, and when the two parts are rotated in opposite directions, they shred the contents inside into finer, more manageable pieces. Herb grinders like this are typically made of aluminum or zinc alloy, and are frequently used in culinary or botanical contexts. They became especially popular in the late 20th century with the rise of herbal medicine and alternative wellness practices. Some versions include multiple chambers to separate finer material from coarser pieces, but this simple two-piece design is one of the most compact and portable. I found this on the beach in Pensacola, and it's been a mystery to me and a friend of mine for the past 20 years. It's roughly the size of a baseball. Anyone know what it might be? What you found is a set of pharyngeal teeth, sometimes called a crushing plate. These specialized teeth are located not in the mouth, but deep in the throat of certain fish species, most notably in the drumfish family, including the freshwater sheepshead and black drum. Pharyngeal teeth serve a unique purpose. They're used to crush and grind hard-shelled prey such as mussels, clams, crabs, and other crustaceans. Instead of chewing with their main jaws, these fish swallow their food and then use this internal molar plate to break it down. The tessellated stone-like appearance is due to the dense, enamel-coated structure designed to withstand high pressure. I found this small kettle years ago and have never been able to find another one like it. I've searched online but haven't had any luck. Does anyone know why it has this unusual shape? The object you found is not a kettle, but rather an antique male bedpan, specifically a type used for urination when someone is bedridden. These bedpans were widely used throughout the 19th and much of the 20th century in hospitals, military settings, and private homes to assist patients who could not leave bed. The wide base allowed it to rest steadily on a mattress or flat surface, while the angled spout was shaped to make positioning easier for male users. Dear viewers, if you enjoy our videos, please subscribe to the channel and give this one a thumbs up. It influences the YouTube algorithm and the video gets promoted more effectively. Thank you. It was labeled as a xylophone and we bought it at an antique store for $9, thinking it would make a cool coffee table. But I've never seen anything like it, so now I'm wondering if it was labeled correctly. What you found is a wooden tongue drum, a type of idiophone, a percussion instrument that produces sound through the vibration of its body rather than strings or membranes. It's usually confused with a xylophone, but unlike a xylophone with individual wooden bars, a tongue drum is carved from a single block or box of wood, with tongue-shaped cuts that create different notes. Instruments like this have existed for centuries. The African slit drum, or krin, is one of its earliest ancestors, used for both music and communication. Similar instruments also appear in Aztec and Southeast Asian traditions, often played during rituals or communal gatherings. Modern tongue drums became more refined in the mid-20th century, especially in the United States, as they found a place in experimental and meditative music. What is this clear tube with balls inside that's built into the wall of a home from the mid-90s? There seems to be one in almost every room. The balls don't move at all, and the white stick or wire running through it is a different color in each room. The item you found is a termite activity indicator, part of an in-wall monitoring system that was commonly installed in homes during the 1990s. These systems were designed to detect early signs of termite infestation without the need to drill or cut into the wall for inspection. The clear tube contains a row of small plastic balls or markers. When termites are present, they disturb the markers as they move through the bait or monitoring area, causing them to shift. The small window on the wall allows technicians or homeowners to check the status at a glance. If the balls are out of place or color indicator has changed, it may signal termite activity. Today, termite control relies more on perimeter bait stations with active ingredients and digital monitoring, offering more accurate detection and easier maintenance without needing access to the inside of walls. I know it's a chair, but what's with those long wooden arms? It looks pretty old, and I think the seat is made of vinyl. Another thing I noticed, it reclines quite a bit. That seems like it would make it harder for someone with limited mobility, like a person in a wheelchair, to get up from it. Any idea what this was actually used for? This is a West Indies planter's chair, a reclining chair that originated in the colonial Caribbean during the 18th and 19th centuries. The long, flat arms weren't designed for resting your arms. They were meant to support your legs. After a day spent riding or working in the heat, plantation owners would sit back and stretch out their legs across the wooden extensions. Some models had fold-out supports, others, like this one, had fixed arms that served the same purpose. The design offered a practical way to cool down and rest without needing a separate footrest. These chairs were typically crafted from mahogany or other tropical hardwoods with cane or upholstered seats. We found this small sealed glass vial with an orange liquid inside that had washed up on the beach in Scotland. Any ideas what it could be? Should I resist the urge to crack it open? This object closely resembles a chemical time delay fuse, used during World War II in British limpet mines. These fuses contained a corrosive liquid sealed in a glass ampule. Once the ampule was broken, the liquid would slowly erode a metal barrier, triggering an explosion after a set delay. They were used in sabotage missions, especially in naval operations and by resistance groups. Although it's impossible to confirm its origin just by looking at it, the similarity is notable. At the same time, glass ampules of this shape are still used today for harmless purposes, like vitamins, lab chemicals, or decorative oils. Because the contents are unknown and it was found on a beach, it's best not to open it. These lead blocks were found in a river in the United Kingdom. Each one weighs about 5 ounces and has some kind of symbols or markings on all sides. Anyone know what they are? These objects are lead yantra cubes, inscribed with variations of Navagraha yantras, astrological magic squares used in Hindu ritual practice. Each face of the cube contains a grid of numbers or symbols arranged in a way that reflects a specific cosmological pattern. These squares are connected to the 9 planetary deities of Hindu astrology, and each one corresponds to a celestial body such as the sun, moon, or planets. Traditionally, Navagraha yantras are drawn or etched onto flat plates and used in ceremonies, meditation, or personal rituals to attract health, protection, success, or spiritual balance. The presence of these yantras on solid lead blocks is unusual but not unheard of. In tantric or esoteric contexts, such cubes may be created as powerful talismans, intended for ritual placement, burial, or immersion in water as part of devotional offerings or spell work. While typically only 9 yantras are used, 1 for each planet, the cubes you found appear to include a much larger variety of symbols and configurations, suggesting either a customized or mass-produced spiritual item. Because they were found in a river, it's likely they were intentionally discarded as part of a ritual or offering. While renovating a local bar, we found this giant wheel buried under the floor. The building used to be a garage. Any idea what this could have been used for? What you found is an in-ground vehicle turntable, a rotating platform once used to turn cars around in tight spaces. These were especially useful in the early days of motoring, when many cars didn't have a reverse gear or when buildings lacked the space to maneuver large vehicles. Turntables like this were installed in garages, carriage houses, and even upscale homes during the early 20th century. A car would be driven onto the platform and the entire assembly could be rotated, either manually or with mechanical assistance, so the vehicle could exit facing forward. Walking along the beach in Florida, I noticed some strange large object thrown on the sand. Any ideas what it could be and what it is used for? What you found is a wave-powered desalination buoy developed by Oneka Technologies, a company based in Quebec. These floating units are designed to convert seawater into drinkable fresh water using only the energy from ocean waves. As waves move the buoy up and down, that motion drives a mechanical pump inside the structure. Seawater is forced through a series of filters and reverse osmosis membranes, removing salt and impurities. The resulting fresh water can then be piped to shore or stored for local use. Found this in southwest Colorado, in an area with a lot of old mining history. There was other abandoned mining equipment nearby, but I've never seen anything like this before. Any idea what it might have been used for? What you found is part of an industrial boiler system, specifically a pinned tube heat exchanger. This component was used to transfer heat from burning fuel to water in order to produce steam, typically for powering machinery in mining or heavy industry. The perforated cylindrical body holds an array of short metal rods, or pins, which increase the surface area exposed to hot gases. As heat passed through the chamber, the pins helped maximize contact with the metal, improving the efficiency of heat transfer to the water surrounding the tube. This type of design was commonly used in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in steam-powered mining operations and mills. What is this decorative, scissor-shaped tool with a rooster motif and a circular blade? It was found among a spoon collection by a 94-year-old woman, but no one remembers what it was used for. The item you have found is an antique egg opener, a specialized kitchen tool designed to gently remove the top of a soft-boiled egg. It was patented by Ferdinand Fleischmann in 1907. The design typically features a scissor-like mechanism with a circular blade that fits over the narrow end of the egg. When the handles are squeezed, the blade cuts a clean ring around the shell, which can then be lifted off with ease. Egg openers like this became especially popular in Europe during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when elaborate breakfast settings and formal table etiquette were part of everyday life, particularly in countries such as France and Germany. They were frequently crafted from gilded or brass-plated metal. In affluent households, such utensils were a way to signal status, and their ornate designs typically reflected the social standing of the host. I found this metal object with no markings or numbers on it. It can retract down to about the size of a bracelet. Does anyone know what it might be? The object you found is an antique expandable purse frame, sometimes called a collapsible ring purse frame. This clever design was used in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as the structural top portion of a coin purse or small handbag. It features a hinged metal structure that expands into a round or oval shape to form the opening of the bag and folds into a compact form when not in use. The small cap you see would typically serve as a lid or clasp once fabric was attached to create the pouch. These types of frames were especially popular during the Victorian and Edwardian eras, when women typically carried small decorative handbags made of chainmail, silk, or beaded fabric. This was in my bag when I picked up an online order of shoes. It came inside a yellow mesh pouch and measures about 7 inches long. I have no idea what it is. The item you found is an acrylic signal light rod designed to be used with an LED. These rods are frequently installed in machines, kiosks, or robotics equipment to function as status indicators. When an LED is inserted into the drilled end, the light travels through the clear acrylic via internal reflection and illuminates the frosted rings at the opposite end. This allows the device to visibly display different operational states, such as standby, active, or error, depending on the color of the light. What is the purpose of the chip in the one prong of this fork? At first I thought it actually was just a chip, but turns out it's on multiple forks in my drawer. Any ideas? The fork you found is a dessert fork, and that chip in the outer tine is no accident. It's actually a design feature with roots in formal European dining etiquette. That clipped or beveled tip is meant to aid in cutting soft desserts, such as cake or pastry, without the need for a knife. While the outer tine is slightly wider to give it more strength for cutting, its clipped end keeps it sharp enough to press through delicate layers while still functioning like the rest of the fork. The dessert fork, also known as a pastry fork, first gained popularity in the 19th century, during a time when multi-course meals and elaborate table settings were a hallmark of upper-class dining. My grandfather specifically told us not to remove this during renovations. I think it might be some kind of ancient coin. Does anyone know what it could be? What you have is not an ancient coin, but a reproduction of the Aztec calendar stone, also known as the sunstone. The original was carved in the late 15th century and is one of the most iconic artifacts of the Aztec civilization. It was discovered in 1790 beneath the Zocalo, the main square of Mexico City, and is now housed in the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico. The stone is a monumental basalt carving, over 11 feet in diameter, and weighing nearly 25 tons. At its center is the face of Tonatiuh, the Aztec sun god, with his tongue depicted as a sacrificial blade. Surrounding him are symbols representing the Aztec understanding of time, astronomy, and mythology. The stone doesn't function as a calendar in the modern sense, but encodes Aztec cosmology and the cyclical nature of eras known as suns. What are these circular metal pieces attached to the side of this outdoor stairway? I accidentally bumped my knee on one and it really hurt. They're placed all along the structure and seem very solid. I'm not sure why they're there, but they definitely pose a hazard if you're not paying attention. The metal pieces you see are called skate stops, and they're installed specifically to prevent skateboarders from grinding along the edge of structures like ledges, planters, handrails, and stairways. Skate stops are typically made of steel or heavy-duty aluminum and come in various shapes and sizes. They break up the smooth edge, making it difficult or unsafe for skateboarders to ride along it. This particular type, frequently referred to as puck-style stops, is common on short walls or stair ledges in urban environments. I found this thing in my food. It was just stuck to a piece of meat. Anyone know what it is? The object you found is an RFID microchip, short for radio frequency identification. These tiny devices are used to store and transmit information wirelessly and are commonly found in pet microchipping, livestock tracking, supply chain management, and access control systems. The chip is enclosed in a small glass capsule and contains a microcircuit along with a copper coil that acts as an antenna. When scanned by an RFID reader, it transmits a unique identification number or stored data. In the livestock industry, RFID tags like this are often implanted under the skin of animals to track origin, health records, and ownership, especially in large-scale meat production. Found this in my aunt's treasure collection. It feels pretty heavy, like a paperweight. There's definitely a solid piece of metal inside, and the outside seems to be made of some kind of hard resin. Anyone know what it is? This is a tracer pebble, a specialized tool used in coastal and riverine studies to measure the movement of sediment under the influence of water currents. Each pebble is engraved with a unique identifier, like the number seen here, and is typically buried in a known location along a shoreline or riverbed. Over time, natural forces such as tides, waves, or river flow transport the pebble downstream or along the shore. Researchers later return with metal detectors or GPS equipment to relocate and record its new position. By tracking how far and in what direction each stone has moved, scientists can better understand patterns of sediment transport and erosion. I came across this brass item that has a dull blade, a hollow handle, and a pair of round knobs on the top. It looks unusual, and I can't quite figure out what it was made for. Has anyone seen something like this before? This object is a boatswain's call, also known as a bosun's whistle, a naval instrument that has been in use for centuries aboard ships. It was a vital tool for boatswains, the senior deckhands responsible for supervising the crew. Before the era of modern communication systems, orders had to be heard clearly across the noise of crashing waves, wind, and busy ship activity. The high-pitched, piercing tone of this whistle made it ideal for cutting through those sounds, ensuring commands were received quickly and understood by all. What looks like a dull blade is actually the keel of the whistle, a structural element that helps control how the sound is projected. The hollow handle functions as the main air channel, allowing air to pass through the body of the call. The round elements at the top, often referred to as the buoy, are crucial to shaping the sound's pitch and volume. These whistles were used for everything from daily routines to emergency signals, and even ceremonial salutes when officers came aboard. Though largely ceremonial today, the boatswain's call remains a recognizable symbol of naval tradition and discipline. I came across this table in an antique store, and the seller mentioned it was once used to trick people during fake seances. I'm curious if anyone knows what kind of purpose this table might have served. This object is an electrophone table, a fascinating piece of late 19th to early 20th century technology that allowed subscribers to listen to live performances from theaters, music halls, and churches via telephone lines. Introduced in London around 1895, the electrophone system enabled users to connect to a central switchboard and choose from various live audio feeds. The table itself was designed with multiple hooks for headsets and concealed wiring to maintain a tidy appearance. Subscribers would don headsets and enjoy live performances from the comfort of their homes. The electrophone service was particularly popular among the affluent, as the subscription fees were relatively high. However, with the advent of radio broadcasting in the 1920s, the electrophone system became obsolete. I came across this heavy brass disc while going through old family items. It has 7 removable plugs, each numbered and slightly increasing in size, and the name Townley engraved on it. We found it years ago on the Isle of Man, and it's been in the family ever since. This object is a set of 7 graduated brass weights housed in a matching brass holder, most likely used with a balance scale in the early 20th century. Sets like these were common in apothecaries, general stores, and small trades across the United Kingdom, where precise manual weighing was essential before digital or spring-loaded scales became widespread. Each plug-shaped weight would be removed individually and placed on one side of a scale to counterbalance the object being measured on the other. While the exact date of manufacture is unclear, the design and craftsmanship are consistent with British weight sets, produced between the late 1800s and early 1900s. I found several ceramic tubes in a drawer full of old odds and ends. They were probably white originally, but have yellowed with age. Each one has holes running all the way through and a small stamp near the thicker end. They're lightweight, made entirely of ceramic, and have a rough, unglazed surface. Any idea what these might have been used for? This object is a porcelain insulating tube, part of an old electrical system called knob and tube wiring, which was commonly used in buildings from the late 19th century through the early 20th century. These tubes were designed to protect fabric-covered electrical wires as they passed through wooden beams or joists in walls and floors. By threading the wire through the ceramic tube, electricians could prevent direct contact with the wood, reducing the risk of fire or wear over time. The tubes also helped insulate the wires where they crossed each other, offering a layer of protection in case one wire broke and dropped onto another. Although this method has long been phased out in favor of modern wiring systems, these ceramic components occasionally turn up in antique collections or during home renovations. I was given this World War II-era box kite stored in a yellow metal container by my grandfather when I was a kid. He said it had been used by a branch of the British forces, though he didn't say which one. The instructions on the container show someone in what looks like a life raft using it, and there's a welded ring pull on the lid, possibly meant to attach to the kite. Does anyone know what this would have been used for, and which part of the military might have used it? This object is an RAF emergency box kite, part of a World War II-era survival radio set often nicknamed the Gibson Girl, due to the curved shape of the radio transmitter it was paired with. It was issued to air crews as part of their survival equipment, in case they were forced to ditch over the sea. The kite's purpose was to lift a long wire antenna high into the air, dramatically improving the range of the hand-cranked distress radio. The yellow container held both the kite and the transmitter, allowing downed crew members in life rafts to send SOS signals and improve their chances of being located and rescued. The ring inside the lid was used to secure the antenna or tethering line, keeping everything stable during transmission. If you're curious whether yours is the British or American version, one detail to look at is the sail. The British version uses the spelling center, while the American one spells it center. These kits were mainly used by the Royal Air Force, but similar versions were also adopted by Allied naval and air forces during the war. While going through some of my grandmother's things, I found this small metal object with a tiny scoop at one end. It feels solid and well made, but I still can't figure out what it was used for. Has anyone seen something like this before? This object is known as an ear pick or ear spoon, and it has been used for centuries as a personal hygiene tool to remove earwax from the ear canal. These tools are especially common in East and Southeast Asia, where traditional grooming practices often include regular ear cleaning. In countries like Japan, China, and Korea, ear picks were often made of bamboo, silver, or brass, and in some cases were decorated with intricate designs or small charms, reflecting both cultural value and attention to detail. In medieval Europe, similar tools were used and were sometimes crafted from precious metals like silver or even gold. They could be part of personal grooming kits carried by wealthier individuals, and were occasionally worn as pendants or attached to chatelaines. Today, modern versions of these tools are typically made from stainless steel or plastic and are still in use in many parts of the world. While they can be effective, medical professionals advise caution with any object inserted into the ear canal, as improper use can cause irritation or injury. I came across this odd-looking pocket watch while going through my grandfather's things. It has a lever on the side and a rather unusual face. I'm not sure it was used like a regular watch. Does anyone recognize what it might have been for? This object is a cleverly disguised pocket roulette wheel, designed to look like an ordinary pocket watch at first glance. Instead of keeping time, it features a central spinning dial divided into numbered sections, usually 12 to mimic the face of a damaged or non-functioning watch. The illusion made it easy to conceal and carry, especially in contexts where gambling tools had to be hidden. Many of these were crafted by modifying real pocket watches, which explains why some original casing details may still be visible around the dial. The side lever winds a small internal spring mechanism, and when released it sets the numbered wheel spinning. The wheel eventually slows and stops, landing on a number to indicate the result. Pressing the lever multiple times could build up more tension, giving a longer and more randomized spin. These devices were once used for entertainment or discreet gambling, and although rare today, they remain fascinating for their ingenuity and the craftsmanship involved in their transformation. Seeing one in working condition is both unusual and captivating. I pulled this old mechanical device out of a dumpster in Denmark. It's very heavy for its size, about the size of a hand, and filled with mechanical parts that click and move when handled. I can't tell if it's a piece of a cash register or some kind of mechanical calculator. The only marking I found says "Made in Sweden." Has anyone seen something like this before? What you found is a mechanical pinwheel calculator, specifically the Odhner Model 239, a hand-crank device used to perform basic arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. These rotary calculators were widely used in offices, schools, and accounting departments from the late 1800s through the mid-20th century, before electronic calculators became common. The machine works entirely through gears, cams, and levers, with the user inputting numbers via sliders and turning a crank to carry out calculations. The model you have was manufactured in Sweden between 1955 and 1967 by the company Original Odhner. Although the first version of this calculator was invented in 1873 by Vilgod Theophil Odhner, a Swedish engineer working in Russia, production eventually moved to Sweden after the Russian Revolution. I picked up this small metal rocket at a yard sale in Northern California about 10 or 15 years ago. It's around 4.5 centimeters tall and feels metallic, but pretty lightweight. I've only come across one other like it, and that one didn't have any information either. Does anyone know what it might be? This small metal object is most likely a lazy dog bomb, an early kinetic projectile developed by the United States military. Despite its compact size, just under 2 inches in length, it was a deadly weapon when dropped from aircraft. Unlike traditional bombs, the Lazy Dog contained no explosive charge. Its lethality came purely from speed and impact. When released from high altitudes or fast-moving planes, it could reach incredible velocities, delivering enough force to penetrate foliage, sandbags, and even lightly armored vehicles. These projectiles were inexpensive to manufacture, easy to deploy in massive numbers, and didn't leave behind unexploded ordnance, making them both efficient and relatively safe in the aftermath of battle. The Lazy Dog was first introduced around the end of World War II and saw wider use during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. It's a striking example of how simple physics was harnessed to create an effective battlefield weapon. Interestingly, this concept had earlier roots. During World War I, similar dart-like weapons, known as flechettes, were dropped from zeppelins and aircraft, marking one of the first uses of gravity-driven kinetic weapons in modern warfare. My ex-stepfather gave me this item years ago, saying it had belonged to his grandfather and was used in a war. It's fairly heavy, not very big, hollow inside, and shaped like a small bomb. I've always wondered what it actually is. Has anyone seen something like this before? What you have is an Mk-23 practice bomb, a type of training ordnance used primarily for military exercises. These dummy bombs were designed to closely mimic the size, weight, and handling of a real explosive device, allowing pilots and ground crews to train safely without the dangers of a live detonation. Instead of containing explosives, the Mk-23 was typically filled with sand, water, or another inert material to simulate the correct mass. To help assess accuracy during practice runs, these bombs often included a small smoke charge that would release upon impact, making it easier for instructors and observers to see where the bomb landed. Devices like the Mk-23 were an essential part of training routines during the mid-20th century, giving servicemen the ability to rehearse bomb runs under realistic conditions without the associated risks. I picked up this glass flask at a garage sale over 15 years ago, and it's been a bit of a mystery ever since. It's filled with a thick brown liquid and has plastic caps on both ends. My mom recently found it again while packing for a move, and I still have no idea what it is. I remember wanting to open it as a kid, but now I'm honestly a little nervous about what's inside. Has anyone come across something like this before? This object is actually a decorative bubble timer, a popular novelty item from the 1990s, used mainly for home or office decor. It contains a thick, slow-moving liquid that creates small air bubbles, which rise gradually when the flask is turned upside down. The movement is meant to be soothing and visually interesting, with each bubble taking several seconds to float to the top. After a few minutes, once all the bubbles have finished rising, you can simply flip it over again to restart the process. These types of items were often found on coffee tables, bookshelves, or desks, alongside other calming or playful display pieces like sand timers or oil and water motion toys. While it may look mysterious at first glance, it's harmless and was designed purely for aesthetic enjoyment. I found this wooden box with a sliding lid and a hinge at one end. It's roughly a foot long, has no visible markings, and came from a box of old family belongings, possibly something that belonged to one of my grandparents. There's a keyhole-like opening on the side. Does anyone know what it might have been used for? This object is a handmade wooden pencil box, a type of project that was commonly built by high school students in woodworking classes during the 1960s and 1970s. These boxes were simple in design but practical, making them an ideal way for students to learn essential skills like measuring, cutting, sanding, and fitting sliding lids. The version you found, with a hinged section and a slot resembling a keyhole, might have been slightly customized either as a personal touch or to serve an additional function, such as storing specific drawing tools or pens. While mass-produced versions existed, the handmade ones often had unique details depending on who made them and how much time they spent refining the finish. Now I want to invite you to help identify an unusual object. What do you think this bright orange plastic capsule could be? There's a warning on the bottom that reads, "Dangerous explosive." Leave your guesses in the comments and I'll reveal the answer in the next video. I found a small glass vial with clear liquid and a dark solid piece inside that clinks like glass. It's been through freezing winters and stayed intact. The box is marked Eclipse Pioneer Division of Bendix Aviation Corporation. Any idea what this might be? This small glass vial is actually part of a turn and slip indicator, an essential instrument used in aircraft to help pilots monitor their position during flight. The clear liquid inside acts as a damping agent, preventing the indicator from swinging too quickly and allowing for a more stable and accurate reading. The dark object, which you described as clinking like glass, is a key component of the internal mechanism. It shifts in response to changes in the aircraft's motion, helping measure both the rate of turn and whether the plane is slipping sideways during a maneuver. The label referencing the Eclipse Pioneer Division of Bendix Aviation Corporation confirms its aviation origin, as that division produced precision flight instruments for military and commercial aircraft, especially around the mid-20th century. I found this 9-inch metal device among my grandma's things. It takes 2 C batteries, vibrates when switched on, and has Japan stamped on both ends. There's no visible wiring, so the metal must be conducting the current. Any idea what this could be? What you found is actually part of a vintage vibrating back massager, sometimes referred to as a backo scratcher, which was popular during the 1960s. These devices were designed to help people relieve tension or scratch hard-to-reach spots on their backs without assistance. The vibrations were powered by C-size batteries, and the body of the device often acted as part of the electrical circuit, hence the lack of visible wiring. The Japan marking on both ends is typical of mass-produced personal care gadgets from that era, as Japan was a major exporter of affordable consumer electronics and novelty items throughout the mid-20th century. Though it may look mysterious now, this quirky little massager was once a common household item, especially among older adults seeking simple home remedies for back stiffness or discomfort. I found this small branded utensil at an elderly relative's home. It has the Borden logo with Elsie the cow and says copyright TBC, but no year and no clear use. It's not broken, just oddly shaped. Any idea what it was made for? What you found is a telephone dialer, a handy little tool designed for use with rotary phones. These devices became popular in the mid-20th century, particularly after the widespread introduction of long-distance direct dialing, which required users to manually enter full area codes in 7-digit numbers. Instead of using a fingertip to turn the dial, a process that could be repetitive and even uncomfortable, the user would place the rounded end of the dialer into the appropriate number slot and rotate the dial. Branded dialers like the one you found, featuring promotional logos such as Borden's Elsie the cow, were often given away as marketing items by companies. They combined practicality with subtle advertising, making them common household objects in the 1950s and 1960s. While digging in my grandfather's backyard in Argentina, I came across a heavy bronze and lead object weighing about 4.5 pounds. It has a numbered scale around the edge but no moving parts. Could this be from an old safe or something else entirely? What you've uncovered is a World War II-era German artillery fuse, a component once used to trigger the detonation of artillery shells. These fuses were designed with multiple settings, allowing them to explode either on direct impact or after a brief delay, depending on the tactical need. Made from heavy materials like bronze and lead, they were built to endure the intense forces of firing and flight. The presence of such an object in Argentina is not entirely surprising. After the war, many former members of the Nazi regime fled to South America, particularly Argentina, where numerous German military artifacts and personal belongings have surfaced over the decades. It's very likely that this fuse found its way there through one of those migration routes, making it not only a relic of wartime technology, but also a silent witness to a complex chapter of post-war history. I came across this strange item in a house filled with old maritime gear. It has a rotating pad eye on the back, and a propeller-like piece with angled blades. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is a taffrail log, also known as a patent log, an early maritime instrument used to measure the speed and distance traveled by a ship. Dating back to the 18th century, these devices functioned much like a nautical odometer. The propeller-like component called the rotator or spinner would be towed behind the vessel on a long line. As the ship moved forward, the spinner turned in the water, and those rotations were mechanically translated into speed readings via a dial mounted on the stern, or taffrail, of the ship. The device allowed sailors to track how far they had traveled through the water. Later, navigators would adjust the data for tides and currents to estimate their actual progress over land. I found this small sealed metal can while cleaning out a basement. It rattles when shaken, but there are no markings or dates, and it won't open, even though someone clearly tried. What could be inside? What you found initially looked like it might have come from a child's toy kitchen. Several people remembered playing with similar cans decorated with old brand labels in their grandparents' homes. However, after closer inspection and some online sleuthing, one person suggested it might actually be a vintage lighter. These were often disguised in everyday-looking objects and sometimes sealed tightly to preserve their fuel inside. At first, the can wouldn't budge. Twisting and pulling didn't help. But after some persistence, the owner managed to open it. Inside was, in fact, a lighter dating back to the 1940s. These novelty lighters were common in that era and often designed to resemble mundane items, making them great conversation pieces. I found this 12-centimeter stainless steel tool in a small leather suitcase that looks medical. When you press the red top, the pincers open. The old card it came with has 02406CHR printed on it. Could this be part of a medical kit? What you found is a vintage olive or pickle grabber, a clever little kitchen tool designed to make fishing items out of jars much easier. When you press the red top, the pincers at the bottom open, allowing you to reach into a jar and grab an olive or pickle without using your fingers or tipping the container. Once you release the top, the pincers close and hold the item securely. These tools were especially popular in mid-century households and often came with a small hook so they could hang off the rim of a jar or serving dish, though it looks like that part may be missing from yours. While it may resemble a medical instrument at first glance, its purpose is purely culinary. I found this metal object while metal detecting in a Minnesota park, where other 1860s artifacts have turned up. My uncle thinks it might be related to World War I toy soldiers, but I'm not so sure. Any ideas what it could be? What you found is a mold for casting lead toy soldiers, a once popular hobby especially among children and hobbyists from the early 1900s through the 1960s. These molds were part of home kits that allowed users to melt down sticks of lead alloy and pour the molten metal into detailed molds, creating miniature soldiers. After cooling, the figures would be filed smooth and painted, often with lead-based paints, adding another layer of risk. At the time, this activity was considered harmless fun, even though it involved handling molten metal and toxic materials in home kitchens. Many people who grew up in that era recall it fondly as a rite of passage, despite the obvious safety concerns by today's standards. I found this 1950s tool at an estate sale. It has a wooden handle and several round metal parts, one of which looks like a sharp-edged cutting wheel, almost like a glass cutter. Someone said it might be a can opener, but the larger wheels seem rusted in place. There are no markings anywhere. Any idea what it really is? This tool is a combination knife sharpener and glass cutter, likely made in the 1940s. It was designed as a multi-purpose device for the household, with small rotating discs for sharpening blades and a sharp-edged wheel for scoring glass. To sharpen a knife, you'd place the blade flat and draw the tool across it at a 45-degree angle several times. If the sharpening discs wore down, you could rotate them slightly using pliers to expose a fresh edge, extending the tool's life without needing replacements. Though simple in design, tools like this were practical and popular in mid-century kitchens and workshops, valued for their durability and versatility. I found these glass-like objects scattered along a rocky beach in the Scottish Isles. Some are clear, others black, and a few have evenly spaced lines around them. They feel like sea glass, and some are nearly as thick as wooden dowels. Any idea what they could be? What you found are carbon rods from old batteries, most likely from larger zinc carbon types that were once common in flashlights and other household devices. These rods formed the central core of the battery and conducted electrical current. Over time, when discarded or lost at sea, the outer casing of the battery corrodes or breaks apart, leaving the carbon rods to drift and eventually wash up on shore. The smooth, glass-like texture and worn appearance you described are the result of prolonged exposure to salt water and wave action, similar to how sea glass forms. The lines or grooves around some of the pieces may have come from the original battery mold, or from pressure inside the casing. It's not uncommon to find these along rocky beaches where currents tend to deposit heavier debris. My parents' neighbors have a device mounted on a dolly that blasts a deafening high-pitched alarm twice a day at 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., aimed directly into their yard. It sounds like a power tool at first, but it's way too loud. Some thought it was to scare birds, but it seems oddly targeted. It has a manual switch. What on earth is this thing? What you've described is most likely a version of the mosquito alarm, a device developed to deter unwanted presence, and originally aimed at teenagers loitering outside shops or public buildings. It emits a high-frequency buzzing sound that can be deeply irritating but not harmful. The standard frequency is around 17.4 kilohertz, which is typically only heard by younger people under the age of 25. Adults often can't hear it at all, which made it an effective but controversial solution when it was introduced in the United Kingdom in 2005. Newer versions of the device may also operate at lower frequencies, such as 8 kilohertz, which are audible to a broader age range and even to animals. Some models are used to deter dogs, birds, or other wildlife from entering gardens or fields, though their directional setup can also make them an effective, if passive-aggressive tool in neighbor disputes. The fact that this one is manually operated and aimed directly into your parents' yard suggests it's not for pest control, but more likely being used as a targeted nuisance. I found a bag with 7 unusual screws at my father's house. Each has a different geometric shape on the head. No one knows where they came from, and with so many step-family visitors over the years, it's a mystery. Any idea what they're for? The objects you found are interchangeable tips for a wood-burning tool, used in the art of pyrography. Each tip features a different geometric shape because it's designed to create a specific pattern, line, or texture when heated and pressed against wood. Some tips are made for shading, others for fine lines or decorative stamps, and together they allow the artist to build detailed and textured designs on wooden surfaces. These tips screw into the end of an electric wood-burning pen, which heats them to the point where they can scorch the surface of the wood in controlled patterns. My father has had this odd hand tool for over 50 years. It's about 6 inches long with a wooden handle and a thin metal head, flat on one end like a hammer. No moving parts and no idea what it's for. Any guesses? What your father found is a bladed ice chipper, a tool commonly used in the late 1800s and early 1900s, before the invention of modern refrigeration. Patented in 1885 by Ethan Rogers, this tool was designed to help break apart large blocks of ice that were harvested from frozen lakes and stored in ice houses. The flat, hammer-like end wasn't for striking. It was where you'd hit the tool with a mallet or hammer. The narrow blade would be positioned against the ice, and a firm strike on the back would chip off manageable pieces. Tools like this were essential in the era when households and businesses relied on natural ice for food preservation. Though simple in design, this ice chipper represents a key part of everyday life before electricity changed how the world stayed cool. What is the tool this woman is holding? It has holes in the body and possibly a hanging hole at the top. There's also a box on the floor that might be connected. Any idea what this could be? The item the woman is holding is a bed warmer, a once common household tool used to heat up cold sheets before bedtime. Traditionally, hot coals were placed inside the metal container. The lid was closed and the warmer was slid between the sheets to gently heat the bed. This helped take the chill out of linens during long winters, especially in drafty homes with little insulation. In this case, the bed warmer might be a more decorative or upscale version, perhaps made of polished metal and intended not just for utility but also for display. As for why she's posing with it, it was common in older photographs for people to be shown holding meaningful or recognizable household objects, especially those tied to their role or status. Judging by her attire and posture, she may have been a lady's maid, someone responsible for assisting with personal grooming, dressing, and travel. Ladies' maids often worked closely with upper-class women, and handling a bed warmer could have been part of her nightly routine in preparing the lady's room for sleep. I found this old wooden and metal tool at a farmhouse. It has a swiveling arm and a spinning drum, and looks like it's over 70 years old, about 3 feet long. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is a butter worker, a traditional tool used after churning to press out the remaining buttermilk from freshly made butter. This step was essential to extend the butter's shelf life and improve its texture. The design of the butter worker is simple but effective. The slanted surface allows liquid to drain through small holes, while the swiveling arm with the roller presses and shapes the butter. The one you discovered closely resembles those used in German-American farmhouses in Wisconsin during the early 1800s. It's built from wood and metal, often handcrafted with basic tools, but engineered with practicality in mind. Over time, more refined versions emerged with smoother rollers and improved drainage, but the basic principle remained unchanged. I found this large wooden item in a rental unit, about 5 feet wide and 30 inches tall. It has no markings, no labels, and no obvious purpose. What you found is a 19th century wooden flax brake, an agricultural tool once used to process flax plants into usable fiber for making linen. Known also as a scutching brake, this large wooden device was designed to break apart the tough, woody stalks of the flax plant and separate them from the soft inner fibers. The process, called retting, was an essential step in traditional linen production. The tool usually featured a hinged blade or set of blades, mounted within a wooden frame. By placing flax stalks across the lower slats and repeatedly pressing down with the upper blades, workers could crack the stalks open and loosen the fiber inside. I dug up this ring while gardening in my backyard. After cleaning it, it doesn't look like a regular ring at all. Any idea what it could be? What you found is a mourning ring, likely from the Georgian or early Victorian period, somewhere between the 1820s and 1840s. These rings were often made of gold and enameled in black, serving as deeply personal tributes to lost loved ones. Many included the initials of the deceased and even contained woven strands of their hair, a common and meaningful practice at the time. Mourning in that era was a highly structured and symbolic process. Wearing such a ring was part of a quiet, enduring expression of grief. Taking the ring off wasn't done lightly. It often marked a turning point in the mourning process, a sign that the wearer was beginning to move forward. Abrupt changes in appearance or dress were frowned upon. Mourning was expected to end slowly and respectfully, just as it had begun. So while this ring may appear small and unassuming, it carries with it the weight of love, loss, and ritual from nearly 2 centuries ago. We found this heavy, palm-sized object while cleaning out our grandmother's apartment. It's not sharp, but it has a rope wrapped around the base, maybe as a handle. No one in the family knows what it is. Any ideas? What you found is a jite, a traditional Japanese weapon used by law enforcement during the Edo period from 1603 to 1868. Unlike swords, the jite was a blunt, single-pronged weapon designed not to kill but to subdue. During this time, it was forbidden to bring a blade into the shogun's palace, even for the guards themselves. As a result, non-bladed weapons like the jite were developed to enforce the law while respecting strict regulations. The jite wasn't just practical, it became a symbol of authority, carried by officials who maintained order in a society with a strict class structure and formal codes of behavior. Though small and unassuming, it could block or catch a sword and was often wrapped with cord at the handle for a secure grip. I bought this strange 8.5-inch tool at an antique store in Maine. Even experts from Antiques Roadshow couldn't identify it. It has a small bowl and odd cleats. Any idea what it is? What you found is a 19th century carpet stretcher, patented in 1860 by Henry Hartshorn of Malden, Massachusetts. This clever tool was used during the installation of wall-to-wall carpets, which were becoming popular at the time. The small cup was designed to hold a supply of tacks, while the curved notch near the front was used to position each tack before hammering it in. As the tool stretched the carpet tight across the floor, the user could quickly reach for a tack and secure it in place. Its design made the process more efficient and helped ensure a smooth, wrinkle-free finish. Though puzzling to modernize, this tool once played a key role in Victorian-era home furnishing. We found this strange utensil mixed in with a set of silverware. It has a tip that looks like a corkscrew, but it's too delicate to pull a cork. It feels like it was made for something specific in food service. Anyone know what it's for? What you found is a butter pick, a small, elegant serving tool used to lift decorative butter curls. In traditional table settings, especially from the early to mid-20th century, butter was often served in soft curls or shavings, made by gliding a special butter knife across the surface of a stick or block. The butter pick allowed guests to transfer these delicate curls onto their plates without using the same utensil, helping to keep things both sanitary and refined. Though not often seen on modern tables, these tools were once a standard part of formal dining, where presentation and etiquette played an important role. There are 9 pegs attached to the end of my bed, too many for just shoes. We got it at a yard sale and there are no labels or markings. Any idea what they're for? What you found is likely a sack bed frame, a style that was widely used from the 1600s through the early 20th century. Unlike modern beds with slats or box springs, sack beds used large cloth panels, usually made of canvas or sailcloth stretched between the headboard and footboard. The mattress, often just a large sack filled with hay or straw, would rest on this suspended surface. The 9 pegs at the foot of the bed weren't for shoes, they were used to secure and tension the canvas panel. The absence of similar pegs or holes along the sides supports this theory. These beds were especially popular in colonial America, particularly in regions like Philadelphia, Virginia, and the Carolinas, and were often crafted by former sailors or shipwrights using techniques borrowed from maritime work. In fact, the phrase "hit the sack" is believed to have originated from this very type of bed, when people literally lay down on a stuffed sack to sleep. My boyfriend found this silver-plated, metal-like object buried in his backyard in Massachusetts. The house used to be a carriage house in the early 1900s, and there's nothing on the back. Any idea what this could be? What you found is most likely a decorative hubcap from a carriage wheel dating back to the early 1900s. These hubcaps were small metal covers that fit over the center of a wooden or metal wheel, both to protect the hub and to give the carriage a finished, refined look. Typically made of brass, copper, or silver-plated metal, they helped shield the hub from dirt, moisture, and wear while adding a touch of elegance to the vehicle. This strange object has a rotating section above the handle and 2 coin-like pieces with Chinese characters in the center. The handle is big, wide enough for 3 fists. Any idea what this could be? This object is a kite spindle, a traditional tool used for winding and releasing kite string. The rotating section above the handle allows the flyer to control the line smoothly as the kite rises and moves through the air. The large handle gives the user a firm grip, even when strong winds pull against the string. This particular spindle appears to be a reproduction of the style that was popular from the mid-1800s to early 1900s. The 2 coin-like pieces with Chinese characters likely serve a decorative purpose, echoing the cultural roots of kite flying, which originated in China over 2,000 years ago. While digging 7 feet beneath a century-old house in Toronto, I found this 5.7-inch clay-like object with no markings. It might be partially glazed. Any idea what it could be? What you found is a soy sauce jug, likely imported from China and dating back to the late Victorian era, around 1880 to 1915. These small ceramic vessels were commonly used to store and transport soy sauce, particularly within Chinese immigrant communities. A nearly identical example was uncovered by archaeologists in downtown San Diego, in an area once home to working-class Chinese immigrants. I found this red box marked Siemens Austria in a 1914 house. Inside are small gold pins that spin when I pull a red cord. They look slightly offset, like they're meant to wind something. Any idea what this could be? This item is a razor blade sharpener, specifically designed for double-edged safety razor blades. These devices were popular before disposable blades became cheap and widely available. The gold pins inside are meant to hold the blade in place by fitting through the 2 central holes found in most traditional razor blades. Once the blade is secured on the pins, closing the red case presses the sharpening surfaces snugly against both edges of the blade. When you pull the red cord, the mechanism inside rotates the blade in a small, controlled, circular motion. This motion ensures both sides of the blade are sharpened evenly, restoring the edge for multiple uses. The craftsmanship and mechanical simplicity made these sharpeners a common bathroom accessory in the mid-20th century, especially in Europe, where quality blades were reused rather than thrown away. Came across this strange item while helping a friend clean out an old house. It almost looks like a rock tumbler, but I can't figure it out. Anyone recognize it? What you found is a miniature steam engine toy, specifically the Walesko D6 model, which gained popularity in the 1960s. These small-scale machines were more than just toys, they were fully functional steam engines, powered by real heat. To operate one, you'd fill the polished, nickel-plated brass boiler with water, place a solid Esbit fuel tablet underneath, and light it. As the water heated and turned to steam, the engine would begin to run, driving an oscillating cylinder in smooth motion. The D6 model also includes a small sight glass so you can monitor the water level during use. A thoughtful detail that reflects its precision engineering. These engines were a popular way to introduce children to the mechanics of steam power. I found this strange chain with two interlocking handles in my grandfather's old army toolbox. He served as a military police officer in the 1950s. Could it be some kind of military police gear? What you found is a vintage police restraint tool known as a chain nipper, or come-along, used in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Patented in 1884 by E.D. Bean, this device featured two T-shaped handles connected by a chain. It was designed to restrain individuals before modern handcuffs became standard. An officer would loop the chain around a person's wrist and twist the handles to create tension and control. These tools were once used by police and military units, including military police in the mid-20th century. I spotted this strange leather and metal box in the Gwalia Ghost Town Museum near Leonora, a mining town in Western Australia. It has a handle, a button, and a transparent panel. Any idea what it might have been used for? This item is an early 20th century railway fare box, a portable device used by train conductors to collect money from passengers. This type of fare box was manufactured by the Coleman Company, based in Tottenham starting around 1905. A patent for the design was filed in 1903 by Joseph Henry Coleman, outlining a simple but secure fare collection mechanism. Passengers would drop their payment into a slot at the top of the box. When the railway worker pressed a button near the handle, the money would drop into a locked compartment below, safely storing the fares until the end of the shift. The transparent panel let both the passenger and the conductor see the money before it was secured. I found this heavy cast iron tool with a handle that turns. It feels solid and old, but I have no idea what it was used for. Any guesses? What you found is a newspaper log roller, a clever manual tool once used to turn old newspapers into fire-starting logs. It was a popular household item in the mid-20th century, especially during times when recycling and self-sufficiency were part of daily life. The process was simple: fold sheets of newspaper to fit the width of the device, insert the edge into the central slot, and start turning the crank. As you rolled, each new sheet was tucked under the flap of the previous one, creating a tight, log-shaped bundle. Once complete, the paper log could be used to start a fire and would typically burn for 10 to 15 minutes, long enough to get a wood-burning stove or fireplace going. I found this weathered metal object on the bar counter at work. It's hollow, has a hole in the back, and says Coca-Cola on top. It's about 4 inches wide. Could it be related to bottles or drinks? What you found is the base of an old-fashioned countertop bottle opener, once a common sight in bars and pubs. This heavy metal piece served as a counterweight, keeping the opener stable while bottles were opened quickly and one-handed. The hollow design and hole in the back were meant to hold a detachable opener mechanism, which appears to be missing in your case. The Coca-Cola branding helps narrow down the age, since the logo says "Drink Coca-Cola." It likely predates 1969, the year Coca-Cola changed its slogan to "Enjoy Coca-Cola." So while it may look unremarkable at first glance, this object is a fragment of vintage bar equipment. What is this mercury-filled object in an old chemistry lab? It has 3 copper wires surrounded by ceramic. Any idea what it might have been used for? This item is a 3-position mercury tilt switch, a specialized electrical component commonly used in industrial machinery. These devices are designed to detect changes in angle or position and activate different circuits depending on the direction of tilt. Inside the housing is a small amount of mercury, which shifts as the device moves, completing a circuit based on its position. The 3 copper wires are most likely arranged with the center acting as a common neutral, while the 2 outer wires connect to separate circuits. Depending on which direction the device tilts, the mercury makes contact with one of those outer terminals. The ceramic insulation around the wires is likely made from high-temperature salamander ceramic beads, used in environments where plastic would melt or degrade. The small screw in the corner likely served as a grounding point. Though now considered outdated, these switches were once valued for their simplicity and reliable contact-free operation. I found this odd tool in my garage: a brass tube with notches, a copper rod, and a wooden handle. One end has a blue coating that looks like ink. Any idea what it was used for? This item is most likely an old wand curler, a vintage hairstyling tool that predates modern electric curling irons. It was commonly used from the late 1800s through the mid-1900s. The notched brass tube was designed to hold a strand of hair, which would be wrapped around it. The copper rod, once heated over a stove or open flame, was then inserted into the tube to transfer heat and set the curl. Unlike today's electric curlers, this tool required careful handling. Too much heat could easily burn the hair. The blue residue on one end may be leftover product, or a heat-reactive ink once used as a temperature indicator. Wand curlers like this were favored for creating tight, structured curls that could last for days. What is this metal spring device that looks like tongs holding two red glass balls? The balls can be removed and the whole thing is just over 3 inches long. Any idea what it is? This item is a Kenberry blade sharpener, a clever little device from the early 20th century used to extend the life of razor blades. It became especially popular during the Great Depression, when disposable items were a luxury and people looked for ways to make everything last longer. The red glass balls are actually part of the sharpener's design. The curved glass mimicked the inside of a mug, which many people used to strop their blades at home. Instead of traditional honing, the Kenberry sharpener allowed users to gently press and draw the blade across the curved surface, realigning the edge and removing small rust spots. This method worked particularly well for the carbon steel blades used before 1960, which dulled quickly and were prone to rust. It wasn't until the introduction of coated blades like the Gillette Super Blue that tools like this began to disappear. We found this odd gold-plated speaker with a clip and two-prong cord in a donation bin. It even has a decorative horse made of opal-like material. We recycle old glasses and hearing aids. Could this be related to one of those? This item is most likely an old Beltone hearing aid microphone from the 1960s. The gold-plated piece with a short cord and two-prong connector was part of a vintage body-worn hearing aid system, designed to be clipped discreetly to a person's clothing. The decorative clip with the opal-like horse wasn't just for flair, it helped keep the microphone in place, often tucked inside a blouse or shirt near the chest. One person who saw a similar device recalled how their grandmother used it. She would clip the microphone inside her blouse and hold the telephone upside down, placing the phone's earpiece near the microphone on her chest and the mouthpiece near her mouth. I found this tool in my grandma's basement while clearing out her things. It has a red cow shoe piece and might be related to bottles. She lived in colonial Congo, so it could be from there. Any idea what it is? What you found is a milking nipple retractor, a specialized tool once used in early mechanical milking systems. Back then, the rubber sleeves that fit around a cow's teats weren't pre-shaped. They were simple, flexible tubes made of natural rubber. To attach them securely without injuring the udder, farmers had to carefully fold the ends of these tubes over the metal milking nozzles. While this could be done by hand, it was slow and awkward. This tool made the job faster, safer, and more consistent. The red rubber part helped grip and stretch the rubber sleeve during setup. Since the sleeves had to be removed and cleaned after each milking session, this tool saw regular use on dairy farms. After World War II, pre-molded rubber liners became standard, and devices like this faded into obscurity. I've got an old-fashioned bottle and can opener with a red plastic tip at the bottom. I've seen others like it for years, but I still don't know what that colored tip is for. Any ideas? This item is a vintage bottle and can opener from the 1970s. Starting in the 1930s, most beer and soda cans were made of steel with completely flat tops. To open them, people used a separate tool known as a church key, which would puncture the lid to create a hole for drinking or pouring. By the 1970s, manufacturers introduced a new style of can called the push tab. These had two pre-scored openings, one for airflow and a larger one for drinking. The goal was to make cans easier to open without additional tools, but the design had a flaw. The tabs frequently left behind sharp metal edges that could easily cut fingers. That's exactly what this opener was made for. The red plastic tip was designed to safely press down the tabs without needing to touch the metal directly, helping users avoid injury. I found this unusual hinged locket among old jewelry. It has a mirror inside and a spinning mixer controlled by a knob on the back. Aside from that, it looks like a regular locket. Any idea what it was used for? This item is a vintage powder compact from the early 1960s, designed with a built-in twist mechanism. Unlike simple compacts that just stored face powder, this one had a clever internal design. When you turned the knob on the back, it would rotate a small mixing plate inside, pushing a fine layer of powder through tiny holes to the surface. This allowed for a cleaner, more controlled application. In your case, it looks like the upper mesh or strainer is missing, but the mechanism still reveals how thoughtfully these compacts were engineered. Some versions even had watch-style winders or refill ports hidden in the back. These items weren't just makeup tools, they were miniature mechanical marvels, blending function and elegance into something women carried with pride. I found this small, hollow item in my mom's attic. It's about 5 inches long and looks like it's made of brass and copper. There are no markings on it, and I can't tell what it was used for. Any ideas? What you found is likely a Centenbach or Mansbachje, a small coin collection box once used by street organ players, also known as organ grinders. These performers were a familiar sight across European cities from the 19th to the early 20th century, turning the crank of a barrel organ to fill the streets with cheerful tunes. The box was usually shaken to the rhythm of the music, drawing attention and encouraging passers-by to drop in coins. Some organ grinders even had monkeys trained to collect donations directly from the crowd. Though the tradition has mostly faded in some European cities, you can still spot these performers keeping the charm of a bygone era alive. Your little brass and copper box is a rare reminder of this colorful street tradition. I found this strange metal purse while sorting through our theater's prop collection. It's lined with dry rotted velvet and has air holes, an adjustable vent, and a leather handle. One side even slides into a channel inside the case. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is likely a vintage portable foot warmer or heater used in the early 1900s to provide comfort during long, cold hours outdoors. These devices were especially common among rural mail carriers who traveled by wagon or sled through harsh winter conditions long before heated vehicles became standard. The vented metal case was designed to hold hot coals or a heated element, with the adjustable openings allowing users to regulate airflow and temperature. Some models, incredibly, didn't require any fuel at all. Instead, they used a stamped metal container filled with a material that absorbed and held radiant heat for hours. In a few rare designs, that material was even radioactive radium, which at the time was believed to enhance heat retention. I found this old tool with rotating wooden handles and 2 fabric straps that unravel from the center. It locks into place and feels very well crafted, but I can't figure out what it was used for. Has anyone seen something like this before? This item is an antique schoolbook carrier, a clever device that helped students carry their books before backpacks became common. Popular in the early 20th century, these hangers featured rotating arms and fabric straps to secure a stack of books tightly together. The wooden handles made it easier to carry the bundle by hand. While this type of school accessory was an innovative solution at the time, it never truly caught on widely. Few examples have survived, making it a rare find today. I was given this unusual scissor-like tool by a relative cleaning out his house. It doesn't cut, but the shorter arm looks like it's meant to press or tamp something. There's even a bit of ash or soot near the tip. What kind of tool is this? This item is a wick trimmer, a tool once essential in any well-lit home before the age of electricity. Unlike modern candles, older candles had wicks that didn't burn themselves down properly. As they burned, the wick would grow longer, creating smoke and dim light. That's where this scissor-like tool came in. It allowed people to snip off the charred tip without extinguishing the flame. In grand settings like ballrooms or theaters lit by dozens or even hundreds of candles, servants would move through the space trimming wicks every 15 to 30 minutes to maintain brightness. The small box-like part on the end of the trimmer collected the burned bits of wick. Eventually, in the 19th century, modern self-consuming braided wicks were developed, and tools like this became obsolete. I found this ornate silver locket while clearing out an estate in Ontario. It's palm-sized, heavy, and contains 2 pads with ink-like residue, but it doesn't seal tightly enough to be an ink reservoir. It has a short chain, but seems more like something carried in a pocket than worn. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a dance purse, a fashionable accessory worn by women from the 1880s to the 1920s during formal balls and social events. These compact purses were designed to be worn on the wrist while dancing, allowing women to carry small personal items like a handkerchief, coins, or powder, without interfering with the movement of the dress. One key feature sometimes hidden inside was a dance card, a small booklet where a woman would write down the names of gentlemen she had agreed to dance with throughout the evening. While the design of your purse is a bit unusual, it fits the purpose and era. The short chain suggests it was meant to be worn around the wrist, and the ornate exterior matches the elegance of that period. The lack of a silver hallmark likely means it's silver-plated rather than but once polished, it will be a beautiful piece. I found this steel container with 2 locking doors, one large, one small, and a full divider inside. It doesn't open on the ends and has no markings. It measures 24 by 8 by 5 inches. Could it have been used for documents or something else? This item is likely a vasculum, a traditional botanical case once carried by field botanists to collect and preserve plant specimens. These rigid metal containers were designed to protect delicate plants from being crushed during transport, while also keeping the interior cool and slightly humid to preserve freshness. The vasculum became popular in Britain around the 1770s, thanks to naturalist William Withering, and by the 1830s the name had become standard. It was a symbol of serious botanical work, commonly seen slung over the shoulder of researchers as they hiked through fields and forests. Though they gradually fell out of use by the mid-20th century, replaced by modern equipment, vasculums remain iconic in the history of natural science. I found this 2-foot-long stick made of dark wood, with a wrapped string detail and a heavy lump on one end. There's also a small hole at the other end. It's too short to be a cane. Any idea what it might be? This item is a knob carry, a traditional club used for centuries in southern Africa, especially among the Zulu people. Made from dense hardwood and topped with a heavy rounded head, the knob carry was both a weapon and a tool. It was carried by men for self-defense, hunting, and even as a walking aid during the long treks. But its role went beyond the practical. Knob carries often held symbolic meaning as well. Some were carved or decorated to show status, and they became part of ceremonial dress or military regalia. While no longer used in combat, the knob carry still appears in traditional ceremonies today, often carried by tribal leaders as a symbol of authority, heritage, and identity. I found this small metal chain with a bar attached, too small to fit a wrist. It belonged to a British engineer from the early 1900s. The links are irregular and it weighs about half an ounce. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is likely a gentleman's accessory from the early 20th century. It could be a vintage Albert chain or a tie chain. The T-shaped bar is a signature feature of an Albert chain, which was traditionally used to secure a pocket watch. The bar would pass through a buttonhole in a waistcoat, while the watch sat safely in a pocket. However, classic Albert chains typically had a swivel hook for attaching the watch, which seems to be missing here. That brings us to a more likely explanation. It's a tie chain. These were popular from the early to mid-1900s. The T-bar would slide through a shirt's buttonhole and the chain would loop around the tie to keep it neatly centered. I found this solid metal object in a farming museum. It's very heavy and has rubber straps and chains. One strap runs vertically and there are 2 horizontal ones on the sides. Any idea what this might have been used for? This item is a blinder used on working farm animals like bulls or horses. These devices were designed to limit the animal's peripheral vision, keeping it focused straight ahead and preventing distractions during labor, especially when pulling carts or plows. The heavy metal frame added durability, while the rubber straps helped secure it firmly to the animal's head. The vertical strap would run over the top of the head, while the two horizontal ones wrapped around the face to keep the device in place during work. Blendering was a common practice on farms throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, as it helped improve safety for both animals and handlers. I found this unusual tool with a wooden handle and a stainless steel hook. There's some French writing. It fits comfortably in the hand. The hook has a sharp diagonal tip, and the inside edge has small grooves. Does anyone know what it was used for? This item is a butter curler, a vintage kitchen tool designed to create decorative curls or ribbons of butter. These tools were especially popular in formal dining settings where presentation mattered just as much as taste. By drawing the curved blade across a block of cold butter, after dipping it in hot water, you could produce elegant butter curls for serving alongside bread or on appetizer trays. Beyond butter, this tool could also be used to shave thin curls from chocolate for desserts or even from wax for crafts. The diagonal edge and ridged interior help grip and shape the material as it's drawn along. What is this brass, spear-shaped object with a twisted copper handle? Both parts are about 8 inches long and there are no markings on the item or its case. Any idea what it might have been used for? What you found is likely the tip of a lightning rod from the late 1800s. During that time, many lightning rods featured twisted copper shafts and brass or bronze spear-shaped tips, both for functionality and visual appeal. This design wasn't just decorative. The pointed tip helped attract electrical charge, and the copper ensured good conductivity to safely redirect lightning strikes into the ground. Given its relatively short length, this piece may have originally been part of a combination lightning rod and weather vane. These dual-purpose devices were popular on barns and homes, serving both as a weather indicator and as protection from lightning. I found a set of tiny antique glass balls. Each one is hollow, delicate, and has a small tip at the end. They're numbered on top and about 2 centimeters in size. They seem like they're meant to float, but I'm not sure where or why. Any ideas? What you found are hydrostatic bubbles, a clever 18th century invention used to test the strength of alcoholic spirits. Created by Dr. Alexander Wilson around 1757, these delicate glass spheres were used by merchants, distillers, and customs officials to measure alcohol content before modern hydrometers became common. Each bubble was precisely calibrated to a specific gravity and marked with a number. When dropped into a sample of liquor, the bubble would either float or sink, depending on the density of the liquid. The number on the bubble corresponded to a particular type of spirit or alcohol concentration, offering a quick and convenient way to assess the proof. These tools were practical, portable, and remarkably accurate for their time. I found this tall wooden object about 6 feet high inside Goethe House in Germany. It's believed to date back to the 1700s, but no one seems to know what it was used for. Any ideas? This item is most likely a linen or napkin press, a piece of furniture used in well-appointed homes during the 17th and 18th centuries. These tall wooden presses were designed to smooth and store fine linens, especially tablecloths and napkins, which were typically made of starched white fabric. By applying pressure, the press would flatten the fabric and give it a crisp, polished look. In wealthier households, napkin presses were commonly placed near the dining table for convenience and as a symbol of status. Simpler versions were kept in pantries or laundry rooms, used after laundering to keep linens neatly pressed and ready for guests. I found a strange pumpkin-shaped item that opens on a hinge. Inside, there's a latch holding a small glass jar with a sharp pin, and a flat glass surface that lifts to reveal a hidden compartment. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is likely a Victorian-era vinaigrette, a small ornate container used to carry scented substances or smelling salts. These delicate objects were often worn on a chatelaine, a decorative chain clipped to a woman's belt that held essential items like keys, sewing tools, or tiny personal accessories. Inside the vinaigrette, a sponge soaked in vinegar or perfume would be placed beneath a pierced metal or glass lid. When unpleasant odors filled the air, common in crowded cities of the 18th and 19th centuries, women could discreetly open the vinaigrette and inhale the scent to refresh themselves, or even relieve faintness or nausea. By the early 20th century, improvements in public hygiene and the growing popularity of modern perfumes gradually led to the decline in the use of vinaigrettes. I found this tiny concrete bench near a curb in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It faces away from the road and is too small for anyone to sit on, even a child. I have seen several like it around town. Any idea what they're for? What you found is probably an old carriage step, a relic from the days of horse-drawn transportation. These small concrete platforms were commonly placed near curbs in the 18th and 19th centuries to help passengers get in and out of carriages more easily. They provided a helpful boost for climbing up and a steady step for getting down, which was especially useful for women in long dresses or older individuals who might have struggled with the height. I picked up this large wooden object at a thrift store in the Netherlands. It looks a bit like an oversized clothespin, stands about 33 inches tall and weighs around 4 pounds. The wood is dark and worn, maybe over 40 years old. Any idea what it was used for? What you found is a washing dolly, a household laundry tool that was widely used from the early 1700s through the late 1800s. Long before washing machines, people used these heavy wooden tools to clean clothes by hand. Clothes were placed in a tub filled with hot water and soap, and the dolly was plunged into the tub and twisted back and forth to agitate the fabric. This process helped loosen dirt, but it took serious physical effort. Laundry day was hard work. Some versions had paddles or cross pieces on the end to stir the water more effectively. Interestingly, people sometimes had to remove the buttons from their garments before washing, since the force of the dolly could damage or break them. I found these black painted iron cones flanking a gate outside a building in Bath, England. They look old but were repainted recently. Any idea what they were originally used for? What you've spotted are likely old torch snuffers. Iron cones once used to extinguish flaming torches before gaslighting became common in the 19th century. These were typically mounted at the entrance to buildings and used by link boys, young boys who carried pitch-soaked torches to guide wealthy pedestrians through dark city streets at night. Once their job was done, the link boy would extinguish the torch by pushing it into one of these cone-shaped snuffers. The metal prevented flames from spreading and contained the smoke and embers. This service, which typically cost a farthing, a quarter of a penny, was especially common in cities like Bath and London. I found this wooden item in the attic of an old country house in the Czech Republic. The top is an open container that rolls on round dowels, and the base has small storage doors on the back. It's built with carpentry joints and no nails. Any idea what it was used for? This item is a box mangle, an early laundry tool used to press and smooth fabric, long before electric irons or steam presses. First appearing in the 17th century, box mangles were common in large households, commercial laundries, and among self-employed mangle women across northern Europe. The design consisted of a heavy wooden box, typically filled with stones that rolled back and forth across wooden rollers. Damp sheets or tablecloths were laid beneath or wrapped around the rollers, and the weight of the box would press them flat. It was a labor-intensive process, requiring 1 or even 2 people to crank or push the box repeatedly. Over time, smaller and even vertical versions were introduced in the 19th century. I found this old bronze vessel with 2 spouts. It looks a bit like a hanging lavabo, but the spouts are too low to hold water without spilling. Any idea what it might have been used for? The item you discovered is likely a Betty lamp, a simple but effective lighting device used throughout colonial America and Europe from the 1600s to the 1800s. These lamps were typically made of bronze or iron and designed to burn animal fat, whale oil, or other available oils. A wick would be placed in one or both of the spouts with the main chamber filled with oil. Once lit, the flame would burn steadily at the end of the spout, offering a soft, flickering glow. Betty lamps were usually hung on a hook or mounted on a wall and became a staple of everyday life in homes, workshops, and barns. The name Betty is believed to have come from the German word besser, meaning better, a nod to how these lamps improved upon earlier, more primitive open flame designs. Though simple by today's standards, the Betty lamp was an innovation that brought light and warmth to people's lives for generations. I found this antique clamp with a silver handle, but I can't figure out its purpose. The beak is hollow and it doesn't open very wide, so it doesn't seem medical. There's a United States quarter in the photo for scale. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a glove stretcher, a 19th century tool designed to gently stretch and shape the fingers of leather gloves. In an era when tight-fitting gloves were part of everyday fashion, especially for women, putting them on could be a challenge, particularly if they were damp or had shrunk slightly over time. The tool usually featured two smooth, rounded arms connected by a hinge or spring. The tips were inserted into the fingers of the glove, and by squeezing the handles, the arms would spread apart, carefully stretching the leather without tearing it. This helped preserve the glove's shape and made it easier to slip on. Your silver-handled version suggests it may have belonged to someone of higher status, as many were made from wood or bone. My grandfather found this wooden container on a New Jersey beach just after World War II. It has a removable plug and a cap that screws off. Any idea what it could have been used for? This item is likely a musket powder flask, a tool used from the 17th through the 19th centuries to store and dispense black powder for firearms. These flasks were essential for both soldiers and hunters, as they allowed for quick and controlled loading of muskets and rifles in the field. The wooden construction wasn't just traditional, it was practical. Unlike metal, wood doesn't produce sparks, reducing the risk of accidental ignition. Many flasks were also made from materials like horn, brass, or leather, depending on the user's status and region. I have a metal object mounted next to my fireplace that can swing inward and seems to contain gears. It's been there forever, and the medallion reads Salter & Company. Any idea what it was originally used for? This item is a clockwork spit turner, manufactured by Salter & Company, a company known for making precision weighing and mechanical devices. This ingenious tool was used to automatically rotate meat on a spit over an open fire, ensuring even roasting without constant supervision. Inside the housing is a clockwork mechanism that, once wound, would slowly turn the spit at a steady pace. The entire device could swing into position beside the fire, allowing the meat to roast evenly on all sides. Before such mechanical turners became common, kitchens sometimes relied on a now-extinct breed of dog called the turnspit dog, which would run inside a wheel to power the spit. I found this metal object near the shoreline on my property in Maryland, right by the Chesapeake Bay. The area was once a shipyard in the late 1700s, and the land dates back to the 1650s. It has raised decorative images on both sides. Any idea what it might be? What you found is the guard of a small sword, a type of elegant, lightweight weapon that was popular in the 18th century, especially among officers and gentlemen during the American Revolutionary period. The guard's primary purpose was to protect the hand from an opponent's blade, and on small swords it often featured intricate decorative work rather than heavy cross pieces seen on larger weapons. Swords like this were as much symbols of status as they were practical sidearms. I found examples similar to yours, including one carried by Captain John Paul Shott during the American Revolution, and another crafted by Boston silversmith William Cowell around 1760. The raised designs on both sides of your piece align with that same tradition, function blended with fine craftsmanship. Given the shipyard history of the land, it's entirely possible your find belonged to someone with military or naval ties in the late colonial period. I found this small silver-colored object in the yard. It fits in the palm of my hand and unscrews into several smaller pieces. Any idea what it could be? What you've discovered is most likely a rosewater sprinkler, an ornamental vessel commonly used in Middle Eastern and South Asian traditions throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. These small, handheld containers were usually made of silver and were used to gently spray scented water or perfume during celebrations, religious rituals, or to greet honored guests. The vessel typically comes apart into multiple pieces, allowing for easy cleaning and refilling. Inside, a slender tube or dropper helped dispense the fragrant liquid with a light flick of the wrist, onto hands, garments, or into the air. I found this mysterious box at a Goodwill store. Inside is a round, stone-like object and 5 pieces about the size of lighters, each decorated with dragons and inscriptions. Any idea what this set might be? What you found is likely a traditional East Asian calligraphy set, most commonly used in Chinese or Japanese ink painting, known as sumie. The 5 ornate pieces with dragon designs are ink sticks, solid blocks of compressed ink used for centuries in both writing and brush painting. The round, stone-like object is an ink stone, used to grind the ink into liquid form. To use the set, a few drops of water are placed on the ink stone. The ink stick is then pressed down and moved in gentle circles against the stone's surface, gradually releasing ink. The more you grind, the darker the ink becomes. This slow, deliberate process was considered part of the artistic ritual, calming, focused, and meditative. I saw a large barrel-shaped object hanging from a wire strung between two standalone telephone poles at my local park. The wire is about 15 to 18 feet off the ground, and there are no other wires attached, just this barrel suspended in the middle. Any idea what this setup might be for? What you saw is likely a suspended target used in a firefighter training game known as waterball. In this competition, teams of firefighters aim high-powered water hoses at a large steel ball, usually around 15 inches wide, suspended from a cable stretched between two tall poles. The goal is to push the ball toward the opposing team's side using only water pressure. Waterball isn't just a game. It's a practical way for firefighters to build skills with hose control, nozzle handling, and teamwork under pressure. The field is marked like a sport court, and matches are usually played in a double elimination format, where a team is only out after 2 losses. This item looks like it might be upside down and was attached to the top of a fence by the previous owner. It's filled with neatly packed pieces of wood, bamboo, hay, and small branches. It doesn't have any noticeable smell. Could this be some kind of feeder or nesting box? What you found is a bee hotel, a man-made shelter designed to support solitary bees and other pollinators. Unlike honeybees, which live in hives, many native bees live alone and prefer to nest in small cavities like hollow plant stalks, dead wood, or cracks in trees. A bee hotel mimics these natural habitats by offering tightly packed materials like bamboo, reeds, hay, and twigs. These structures provide a safe place for female bees to lay their eggs. Each hollow tube serves as an individual nest, where the bee will seal off each egg with pollen and nectar for the larvae to feed on when they hatch. Bee hotels are an important conservation tool, especially as natural nesting sites disappear due to urbanization. So even if it looks upside down, it may still be doing its job, quietly supporting local pollinators right from your fence. What is that small metal comb or brush you always see near the bottom or top of an escalator? The item you're asking about is called an escalator skirt brush. While it may look like a convenient place to wipe your shoes, its real purpose is all about safety. These brushes run along the sides of escalators, right where the moving steps meet the stationary skirt panels. They're designed to gently nudge feet, clothing, and bags away from the edge, preventing them from getting caught in the narrow gap between the steps and the side wall. And while some people do try to shine their shoes on them, doing so can be dangerous and even cause the escalator to stop if sensors detect unusual pressure. I came across an old machine at a historic site in Northern Virginia. Based on its design, it looks like it could date from either just before or just after the American Revolution. Does anyone know what it might have been used for? This is an apple crusher and press, a common tool used in rural life during the 18th and 19th centuries, especially on farms in early America. This machine was used in cider making, a common practice on farms where apples were plentiful, and cider was a safer alternative to water which was commonly contaminated. The process began by feeding whole apples into the crusher, which broke them into pulp. That pulp was then transferred into the press, where heavy pressure extracted the juice. The juice was collected and typically stored in wooden barrels to ferment naturally over time, turning into hard cider. I came across this strange structure in a lake in Girard, Ohio. It seems to drain into a large pipe at the bottom of a nearby hill, big enough to walk through. Does anyone know exactly what it is? What you found is a bell-mouth spillway, a type of overflow system designed to safely drain excess water from a lake or reservoir. Also known as a glory hole because of its distinctive inverted bell shape, this structure acts like a giant drain, pulling in water when the lake reaches a certain level. The spillway is connected to a large underground pipe that channels the water downhill, away from the dam or shoreline. This system is a critical safety feature. Without it, rising water could overtop the dam, causing erosion or even structural failure. While walking along the beach in Grayland, Washington, early one morning at low tide, I came across several sets of perfectly spaced holes in the sand. Each set had 6 holes, and they were arranged in a line about 50 feet apart, moving closer to the water. A stick went 3 to 4 feet deep into each hole. Any idea what could have caused them? What you saw were the remnants of a scientific clam survey. Marine biologists and environmental researchers often conduct these types of surveys along tidal flats to study the population and distribution of clams and other burrowing sea life. The holes you found were likely made using a method called quadrat sampling, where researchers dig identical holes in carefully spaced patterns to gather data from standardized sections of beach. Each set of 6 holes represents a sampling zone. By analyzing what they find in each section, clam size, species, and number, they can estimate the health and density of the population across a much larger area. The progression of sets closer to the water helps scientists understand how tidal position influences where clams prefer to live. I came across an odd-looking structure in a park near a community college. Standing roughly 4.5 meters tall, it has a sturdy concrete base and is positioned by itself in a wide open field, not too far from a small lake. Inside the structure, you can see what look like metal fins or vanes. It's located close to a walking trail, but there aren't any other buildings nearby. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is most likely a bat house, an artificial roosting structure designed to support local bat populations. These enclosures are built to mimic the narrow crevices in trees or buildings where bats naturally roost. Bat houses are typically placed near water sources like the lake you mentioned, because that's where insects are most abundant, providing a reliable food source for bats. Parks and community spaces install them to promote natural pest control, since a single bat can consume thousands of insects in one night. These structures help maintain the local ecosystem by giving bats a secure place to rest and contribute to natural pest control. My brother spotted this strange object in a field near Marple in northern England. It looks like a heavy black balloon covered in white netting. We thought it might be an animal feeder, but there's only one of them. Any idea what it could be? What your brother saw is an H-trap, a cleverly designed device used to reduce horsefly populations. The large black balloon absorbs heat from the sun and mimics the shape and warmth of a large animal, exactly the kind of target biting female horseflies are drawn to. When a horsefly lands on the ball hoping for a blood meal, it finds nothing to feed on. Instinctively, it flies upward, and that's where the trap does its job. The fly is funneled into a clear chamber at the top, where it becomes trapped. These devices are especially useful in rural areas, farms, or fields, where horseflies are common and can cause problems for both animals and humans. Simple in appearance, but highly effective in action. I came across this 10-foot-tall metal structure in the Italian Alps near Marmolada. We spotted a few of them along the mountainside. Does anyone know what they're used for? What you saw is part of a mounting system for an avalanche control device known as the O-Bell X. These tall metal structures are installed in alpine regions like the Marmolada to help manage avalanche risk in high snowfall areas. Each unit houses tanks of hydrogen and oxygen, which are used to create controlled explosions. The idea behind the system is to trigger small, localized avalanches in a safe, controlled manner, before large, dangerous ones can form naturally. When a buildup of unstable snow is detected, the O-Belx pod releases the gases and ignites them above the snowpack, creating a shockwave that destabilizes the snow. Each unit costs around $120,000, but the investment significantly improves safety for mountain communities, ski resorts, and infrastructure like roads and railways. I found a cast iron shaft sticking out of the marsh on my property. The top has threading, a keyway, and something that looks like a gear. I don't know how deep it goes, it's completely stuck and I can't move it by hand. Any idea what this might have been used for? A. This is the worm gear and drive shaft from a 1928 to 1929 Ford Model AA rear axle assembly. These components were originally part of a heavy-duty truck designed for hauling loads. Parts like this were commonly salvaged and repurposed for other uses, once the vehicle was no longer roadworthy. In many rural areas, old truck axles and similar iron parts were driven into the ground to serve as durable property markers or fence stakes. In Prague, I saw a metal downspout with a huge bulge in the middle, made of the same material as the rest of the pipe. Is this caused by water freezing inside, or could it be an intentional design or art installation? What you saw isn't a damaged pipe or the result of freezing. That strange bulge is actually part of a hidden installation by Czech sculptor David Czerny, known for his provocative and unconventional public art scattered throughout Prague. This particular piece is called Embryo, and it's mounted on a drain pipe along the side of the Divadlo na Zabrdlí Theater. Installed on December 9, 2008, to celebrate the theater's 50th anniversary, Embryo was designed to resemble a fetus curled up inside the pipe. At night, a soft inner glow brings the form to life, revealing the subtle shape within. I found this heavy 18-inch long object buried in my yard on Cape Cod. It weighs about 75 pounds and seems very old. Given the location, I suspect it's nautical. The rust makes me think it's cast iron, but the greenish coating could also suggest bronze. Any ideas what it might be? Anchors? What you found is a capstan winch, a heavy-duty manual device once commonly used on mid-20th century boats. These winches were essential for raising anchors, hauling ropes, or managing other heavy loads on deck. They operated using a simple ratcheting mechanism, and a metal bar could be inserted into the side slot next to the gypsy head for extra leverage when turning the drum, 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 when turning the drum. Outside our hotel near Seoul, not far from Everland, we noticed several grassy mounds on a hillside, each with a sign nearby. They look intentional and well kept. Does anyone know what these could be? What you saw are traditional Korean graves, typically shaped like small grassy mounds on hillsides. These rounded burial sites are a deeply rooted part of Korean culture and reflect the country's strong emphasis on ancestor respect. The signs you noticed are actually tomb markers, and the flat stone tables in front of the mounds serve as altars where family members leave offerings, typically food and drink, during ancestral rites and holidays like Chuseok. These graves were traditionally reserved for nobles, high-ranking officials, or wealthy families. When you see multiple mounds on the same hill, they typically belong to members of the same family. If two mounds are close together, they may mark the graves of a husband and wife. I found this solid metal spike in a hotel bathroom in New York. It's about 25 centimeters long, made of aluminum, and has a hole at the top, as if something is meant to be inserted into it. It was mounted to a makeup table but can be removed. Any idea what it might be? What you found is a bud vase, a minimalist flower holder designed to display a single stem, commonly used in hotels, restaurants, and public spaces. These vases add a subtle decorative touch to otherwise utilitarian spaces, and their fixed base ensures everything stays neat and secure. I found a round metal object with no visible opening on top, but it looks like there used to be a lever or handle for turning it. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is most likely a vintage chalkline tool, dating back to around the 1950s. These tools were widely used in construction and carpentry to mark perfectly straight lines across surfaces like wood, drywall, or concrete. The round metal body held a spool of string coated with chalk, and the lever you noticed was used to reel the line back in after each use. To operate it, you'd pull out the string, stretch it tightly between 2 points, and then snap it against the surface. The chalk-coated line would leave a clean, straight mark, ideal for guiding cuts, aligning materials, or marking reference points. I found this lightweight item made of aluminum and glass at a thrift store, but even the shop owner didn't know what it was. It feels delicate and a bit unusual. Does anyone recognize it? This item is an ultraviolet light bulb from a vintage Sperti sun lamp, specifically the P163 model. These devices were popular in the mid-20th century and were used for light therapy, particularly to treat vitamin D deficiency. Back then, doctors and scientists had begun to understand how ultraviolet light helped the body synthesize vitamin D, especially in people with limited sun exposure. Sperti was a leading company in this field, and their sun lamps became a common fixture in homes and clinics during the 1930s and 1940s. The full set typically included the ultraviolet lamp, protective goggles, a stand, and a manual with health guidelines. While they were marketed as health-boosting devices, they were also early predecessors to modern tanning lamps. I came across this item while in the Netherlands. It has a handle attached to a wooden cylinder which is split inside by an internal divider. There are holes on both the top and bottom, and the whole piece stands roughly 6 inches tall. What could it have been used for? What you found is a vintage cigarette dispenser, most likely made in Europe between the 1960s and 1980s. These small mechanical devices were designed to add a bit of flair to what was once a very common social ritual, offering a cigarette to a guest. You'd load the cylinder with cigarettes, and when the handle was pressed and released, one cigarette would be lifted into a tray at the top, ready to be picked up. At a time when smoking was widespread and cigarettes cost just a few cents per pack, it was considered polite to keep cigarettes easily accessible for visitors. Many people displayed them in decorative holders, ranging from sleek silver cases to playful wooden gadgets like this one. I found an antique tool that looks a bit like a fork. It has sharp prongs and measures about 9 inches in length and 2.5 inches across the head. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a vintage ice chipper, specifically a Gilchrist No. 50 model designed in the early 1900s. Back then, before electric refrigerators, ice was delivered in large blocks and stored in home ice boxes or used in bars and restaurants. Tools like this were essential for breaking down those blocks into smaller, more manageable pieces. The sharp prongs were used to chip and crack ice, and the sturdy handle gave the user enough leverage to work through thick, frozen chunks. Bartenders especially relied on tools like this to shape ice for cocktails, long before modern ice machines existed. Interestingly, the design has stood the test of time. Contemporary companies like Copa still produce ice chippers in a nearly identical form, proving how practical and reliable the original concept remains even today. I found an object that looks like a clock or timing device, but it seems to be missing some internal parts. There's a window below the clock face, but there are no letters or numbers anywhere on it. It measures about 5 inches across the front and 2 inches deep. Any idea what it might have been used for? What you found is a night watchman's clock, a piece of early security technology used from the late 19th through the mid-20th century. These devices were carried by security guards on their rounds to provide proof that they had checked in at designated locations throughout a facility. Inside the clock was a long paper tape connected to the mechanism, which advanced over time. At each checkpoint, the guard would find a special key, typically chained to the wall, insert it into the clock, and turn it. This action would stamp the tape with a code and timestamp, recording exactly when and where the guard had been. Night watchmen's clocks were widely used in factories, warehouses, and institutional buildings before being phased out by electronic systems. I came across this item years ago in the basement of an old house. At first glance, it looks like a regular coin, but it's actually hollow and opens up. When I was a kid, I used to stash small coins inside, or use it to pass secret notes to friends. Does anyone know what it really is? What you found is a coin lighter, styled to resemble a 19th century French coin. These types of items were especially popular in the 1950s and 60s, when quirky gadgets were in vogue. Originally, it would have contained the internal components of a lighter, though it looks like those pieces are now missing. I came across a scissor-shaped tool that has a spoon on one end and a ring on the other. It looks quite old, and there's an inscription on the underside of the spoon that reads, "Patent August 27th, 1901. Any idea what this item might have been used for? What you found is a pineapple eye snip, patented in 1901 by John Pack. This scissor-like tool was specifically designed to remove the tough, inedible eyes from a pineapple, those small, thorny circles left behind after the skin is peeled, while preserving as much of the fruit as possible. At the time, pineapples were considered a luxury. They were so rare and expensive that people even rented them for parties as centerpieces. Despite the emergence of James Dole's industrial pineapple plantations in Hawaii by the early 20th century, along with major advances in canning and transportation, pineapples were still considered exotic and remained largely accessible only to the wealthy. I found a small rusty metal plate with the word "Stop." It measures about 3 by 2.5 inches, and came from a box of vintage jewelry parts I picked up at a flea market. There are mounting holes on the bottom, but no markings or labels. Any idea what this might have been used for? What you found is a brake light frame from an antique car, most likely from a vintage Ford model produced between 1928 and 1929. The metal plate with the word "Stop" cut out was mounted over the single rear brake light, which would glow red when the driver hit the brakes. The cutout letters helped make the signal more visible, especially in low light conditions. In the early days of automobiles, cars only had one rear brake light, since traffic was lighter and speeds were much slower. What is this wooden object that's about 3 feet long and 1.5 feet tall, with a metal band wrapped around its middle? What you found is a former cone, a traditional tool once used in the process of hat making, specifically for shaping raw felt into the basic cone form used to create wool felt hats. In this process, the warm, pliable felt would be wrapped tightly around the wooden cone. The metal band around the middle served as a guide to cut the felt cleanly in half, creating two symmetrical pieces. These halves were then further shaped, blocked, and stiffened to become finished hats. The number on the cone likely refers to the size or style specification. While metal detecting in Germany, I found a 15-inch long object with a red painted bottom. It's not especially heavy, and I can't quite figure out what it is. What you found is likely a 4-pound incendiary bomb developed by Imperial Chemical Industries during World War II. These bombs were standard issue for the Royal Air Force's Bomber Command and were used extensively throughout the war. By 1944, over 36 million of them had been produced. The bomb's body was typically made from a lightweight aluminum-magnesium alloy, designed to ignite on impact and burn fiercely for up to 10 minutes. Inside, it was packed with thermite incendiary pellets, materials capable of generating extreme heat. I came across this old wooden handheld object with several metal prongs. It's pretty lightweight and was tucked away in a box of family heirlooms. I was told it's been passed down for at least 4 generations. Does anyone know what it might have been used for? This item is a vintage meat tenderizer, likely made in the mid-20th century by a Japanese company called Our Own Import. The multiple metal prongs were used to pierce the meat's surface, helping to break down tough muscle fibers and connective tissue. This not only made the meat easier to chew, but also allowed marinades to soak in more deeply and helped it cook more evenly. I found a pair of unusual old goggles at a thrift store. They're made of leather, metal, cloth, and velvet, and have a spring mechanism that keeps them either open or closed. The only marking says, "Patented Made in USA," but there's no patent number. The store owner didn't know what they were. They look like they could be several decades old. Any idea what they might have been used for? What you found is likely a Masonic hoodwink, a ceremonial blindfold used in Freemasonry rituals. Traditionally crafted from leather, cloth, velvet, and metal parts, the hoodwink is designed to cover the eyes during specific initiation ceremonies. The spring-loaded mechanism allows it to be quickly opened or closed as part of the ritual. In Freemasonry, the hoodwink symbolizes darkness or a lack of knowledge, which the initiate is expected to move beyond during their journey toward enlightenment and understanding. It plays an important symbolic role in marking the transition from ignorance to awareness, a core theme in Masonic teachings. I came across some early 20th century kitchen cabinet photos, and several of them have built-in funnel-shaped structures. They seem to be part of the cabinet itself. Does anyone know what these were used for? The cone-shaped attachments shown in the photo are part of a combined flour bin and sifter. To use it, you'd place a bowl underneath to catch the flour as it was sifted. This setup was a typical feature of what's known as a Hoosier cabinet, a freestanding kitchen unit that functioned as both storage and workspace. These cabinets became especially popular in the United States during the early 1900s, when most kitchens still lacked built-in cabinetry. One of the leading producers was the Hoosier Manufacturing Company based in Newcastle, Indiana. Their products became so widespread that the name Hoosier cabinet eventually became a generic term. By 1920, the company had sold more than 2 million of them. While going through some old fireplace tools in a house I recently purchased, I came across this item. It gives off a slight asphalt-like odor and has no maker's marks anywhere on it. The container's handle has a notch that seems designed to hang it on a nail. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is known as a Cape Cod fire starter, sometimes called a fire starter pot. These handy devices were once a common fixture near fireplaces and wood stoves, designed to make lighting a fire quick and effortless. Iron pot would typically be filled halfway with kerosene or lamp oil. A separate rod with a soapstone or porous ceramic head would be dipped into the fuel to soak it up. When you lit the stone with a match, it could burn for up to 10 minutes, giving you plenty of time to ignite the logs without needing kindling or newspaper. Over 40 years ago, I picked up a small metal object with brass rollers on both ends. It's about 1.5 inches long, has some weight to it, and there's a felt pad inside, though it's hard to see because of the tight gaps. One side is marked, Bruce Humphreys Publishers, Boston, Massachusetts, made in USA. Any idea what this was used for? The object you found is a vintage staff writer, a compact tool designed for musicians and composers to draw musical staff lines on blank paper. This device allowed users to create staff lines anywhere without the need for pre-ruled paper. The brass rollers on each end were inked by the internal felt pad, enabling the simultaneous drawing of 5 parallel lines representing the musical staff. The staff writer was produced in the 1950s and 1960s and distributed by various music publishers, including Bruce Humphreys Publishers of Boston, Massachusetts. Its compact dimensions and solid construction made it a portable and durable tool for musicians. The design of the staff writer was inspired by earlier tools like the rastrum, a 5-pointed pen used since the 16th century to draw staff line, and the stravagor, invented by composer Igor Stravinsky around 1911. I came across this old tool in my dad's workshop. It has a wooden handle and a metal plate with saw-like teeth. It looks like something used for woodworking, but I'm not sure. Does anyone know what it might be? What you've found is a veneer saw, a specialized woodworking tool used for cutting thin sheets of hardwood veneer. Veneer is a fine layer of decorative wood that's commonly glued onto furniture or panels to give the appearance of solid wood without the weight or cost. One of the key features of this tool is its offset handle, which is elevated above the blade. This design allows the user to cut flush against a flat surface, such as a workbench or the edge of a panel, while keeping their hand out of the way. The curved blade shape also helps with controlled, intricate cuts, particularly when trimming veneer in tight spots or around corners. I saw this strange drill hammer-looking tool posted in a machinist group. Kind of looks like it has a Jacob's chuck on one end, but I have no idea what it's actually used for. Anyone recognize it? What you came across is a specialized glass cutting tool known as a splitter, patented by George Philippe on May 17, 1949. This tool was designed for precision cutting of large glass sheets, commonly used in window fabrication. Its most distinctive feature is a rotable diamond cutter head mounted at one end. The tool is engineered to be used along a straight edge, allowing the diamond tip to score the glass in a controlled, continuous line. The handle is unusually long to provide better leverage and reach, enabling the user to apply steady pressure across the full length of the glass sheet. The ability to tilt and rotate the cutter head means the user can adjust their hand position without losing contact with the guide, a crucial advantage when cutting larger panes or working on site. Dear viewers, if you enjoy our videos, please subscribe to the channel and give this one a thumbs up. It influences the YouTube algorithm and the video gets promoted more effectively. Thank you. I bought a silver spoon on Facebook Marketplace while in Portugal. The listing just said it was silver, but the top part has a really distinctive shape. I'm curious, does anyone know what this type of spoon might be used for? The spoon you purchased is a silver medicine spoon, most likely made in Europe sometime between the early 18th and late 19th century. These specialized spoons were designed to make it easier to administer liquid medicine, particularly to children, the elderly, or bedridden patients. What makes this type of spoon unique is the partially covered bowl and the narrow hole at the end. This design allowed caregivers to pour the medicine gently into the patient's mouth while minimizing spills. Medicine spoons like this were often made from silver, not only for its durability, but also because it was believed to have hygienic or even therapeutic properties. They were sometimes included in personal travel kits or household medical chests. I found this strange metal object out in the desert. It has a very geometric shape that doesn't seem natural, and it looks and feels like cast iron. It weighs around 10.5 ounces. Any idea what it might be? What you found could be a worn-out grinding ball from a tumbling mill, a large rotating drum used in mining and industrial processing to crush materials like ore, rock, or cement. These mills operate by rotating heavy steel or cast iron balls along with the material to be broken down. As the drum turns, the balls tumble and grind the material through impact and friction. Over time, these balls wear down from constant contact with hard materials. Originally spherical, they gradually lose their shape, becoming more geometric or flattened, frequently resembling unnatural-looking metal lumps. While cleaning out an old tool closet, I came across a small metal tool that folds down to about 2 inches and comes in a red leather pouch. When unfolded, it has 2 telescoping rods that extend to around 17 inches. They're not spring-loaded and don't lock, but they stay extended. It was stored with regular hand tools like drills. Does anyone know what this might be? This item is a vintage folding garment hanger, commonly referred to as a midget hanger. It was patented in 1912 by inventor Lozer Kalina as a portable solution for keeping clothing neat during travel. The compact design allowed it to fold down to just a few inches in length, making it easy to carry in a vest pocket or store inside a small pouch, like the red leather one you found it in. When extended, the hanger reveals 2 telescoping arms that support garments such as coats, vests, trousers, or skirts. While the rods don't lock into place, they stay extended through friction alone, which was sufficient for light to medium weight clothing. The center section typically included a hook or slot that allowed the hanger to be suspended from a rod or nail. These travel hangers were especially popular with businessmen, military personnel, and frequent travelers in the early to mid-20th century. I came across a small cylindrical object that sort of unrolls or twists open, revealing a hollow tube on one end. It has Fairchild inscribed on it and measures about 2 to 3 inches long. There's also a thin slit running lengthwise down the body. Any idea what this might be? What you found is a Victorian-era pencil pendant, manufactured by the Leroy Fairchild Company, one of the most prominent makers of fine writing instruments in the 19th century. When twisted or compressed, the open slit would gently grip the graphite, allowing it to be used for writing or sketching. These pencil pendants were especially popular among women in the late 1800s and were commonly worn on chatelaines or as part of a necklace. Leroy Fairchild was a prolific inventor and craftsman, holding numerous patents for pencil mechanisms, ornamental designs, and pen holders. His company became a leading name in American writing tools. However, despite its earlier success, the Leroy Fairchild Company eventually went bankrupt in 1905, making surviving examples like this one increasingly rare and collectible. I found a wooden box that contains a removable metal sphere. When I shake the sphere, it makes a metallic rattling sound, like there are tiny balls or pieces inside. My dad discovered it in a relative's house after they passed. Any idea what this could be? What you found is a type of alcohol hydrometer, a scientific instrument used to measure the strength and density of liquids, typically in the context of alcohol production. These were essential tools for distillers, brewers, and even tax officials who needed to calculate alcohol content for quality control and taxation purposes. The metal sphere you described is likely the weighted float of the hydrometer, and the small metallic balls you hear inside serve as internal weights that help stabilize or calibrate the instrument. When placed in a liquid, the hydrometer floats, and the point at which the liquid meets the scale indicates the alcohol concentration or specific gravity. I found this object in an old countryside house in Compilation, France. It looks a bit like a machete, about 18 inches long and 6 inches wide. It's not sharp, but it does show signs of wear. Any idea what it might have been used for? What you found appears to be a ramdao, a traditional ceremonial blade originating from Nepal and parts of eastern India. While it resembles a machete in shape, the ramdao is typically much broader and heavier, and it was never meant for everyday utility work. Instead, it played a significant role in religious and ritual contexts, particularly during festivals such as Durga Puja. The ram dao was traditionally used for animal sacrifice, and its wide, curved blade was designed to deliver a single, powerful strike. These blades were usually handled by a designated caste or group of ritual specialists known as khajas, who were trained in ceremonial slaughter practices. The blade's distinctive size and design weren't just functional. They also held symbolic meaning, representing the strength and will of the deities to whom the offerings were made. In Hindu iconography, goddesses like Durga and Kali are frequently depicted wielding weapons that resemble the ram dao, emphasizing its spiritual significance. What is this chainmail-like item I found at a yard sale? It has a flexible mesh of interlocking wire loops, a leather strap with buckle closures, and looks like it was meant to protect the thumb or hand. Any ideas what it was used for? This item is a protective thumb guard, patented by Peter Waller in 1915, designed specifically for husking corn. During that period, hand husking was still common in American agriculture, and repeated contact with sharp husks frequently resulted in painful cuts and blisters. Waller's invention offered a practical solution: a flexible metal mesh that conformed to the shape of the thumb, reinforced with a leather wrist strap to hold it securely in place. Because of its effective construction, it may have also been adopted in other trades like butchery, where workers needed to shield their thumbs from slips of the knife or sharp bones. I came across a small all-metal item that looks to be around 80 to 100 years old. It's about the length of a baby carrot and has a few moving parts. It came in a wooden case with a carved indentation that matches its shape exactly, so it seems like a standalone piece. Any idea what it is or what it might have been used for? The item you've discovered is a phleem, a traditional medical tool once used in the practice of bloodletting. For centuries, this procedure was believed to help treat illness by draining blood to rebalance the body's internal systems, in line with the old humoral theory of medicine. The word phleem comes from the Greek term phlebotom, meaning to open a vein. These instruments have been used since ancient times, with examples dating back to early medieval Europe. By the 17th and 18th centuries, phleems had evolved into compact folding tools, usually featuring short, angled steel blades fitted into a brass or metal housing for durability and accuracy. Most phleems contained several blades of different sizes, allowing the practitioner to select one appropriate for the task. The blade would be placed against the vein and then tapped with a small stick or mallet to make a quick incision. This approach helped control the depth of the cut and reduce the risk of unintended injury. Although some phleems were used on people, they were far more common in veterinary care, especially for horses and livestock. For human patients, smaller and more precise tools like lancets were typically favored. I've had this odd triangular item since I was a kid and could never figure out what it's for. It's made of metal, feels a bit heavier than it looks, and is marked US 4-inch on one side, with an L inside a diamond. It has 3 holes and measures 4 inches from base to tip. The back has some worn lettering that seems to start with MIW. This item is an earth anchor, more specifically an arrowhead anchor, a type of ground-based anchoring device used to secure cables, structures, or equipment without the need for permanent fixtures. These anchors are driven into the soil using a rod or drive tool that fits into the back end, opposite the pointed tip. Once in place, the anchor rotates and locks itself into the surrounding earth, creating a stable and reliable anchor point. The holes in the anchor are designed for threading steel cables or rods through, allowing it to hold tension once buried. They're commonly used in utility work, construction, erosion control, and by outdoor enthusiasts for setting up slack lines or guy wires when no trees or fixed points are available. The US 4-inch marking refers to the size of the anchor, and the L inside a diamond is likely a manufacturer's logo. These markings, along with the partially visible MIW, may point to a specific US military or industrial supplier, as these anchors are also used for temporary field installations. During a bathroom remodel, I found some tiny glass tubes filled with liquid hidden under the vanity. They're about 2 inches long, very lightweight, and have colored ends. Does anyone know what these might be used for? What you found are vintage perfume samples known as nibs, a patented form of fragrance packaging that was popular from the 1930s through the 1950s. These small tubes, usually made of glass, were designed to let customers test a wide range of perfumes without purchasing full-size bottles. Each tube, around 2 inches long, was filled with a small amount of perfume and sealed at both ends. To use it, one would simply snap off the tips and let the fragrance drip onto the finger or wrist. The colored ends helped identify the scent inside, making it easier to distinguish between different fragrances in a sampler set. A popular advertising line from that era stated, "It is no longer necessary to buy many expensive bottles of perfume in order to select the right fragrance for you. Use 25 nib spotlets, then select your favorite perfume." These sets were frequently given away by department stores or included with high-end purchases. Because the tubes were sealed tightly and stored in darkness, the perfume inside typically remained surprisingly well preserved even decades later. I opened a bag of Hershey's Candy Cane Kisses and found a small, solid metal object inside, about the same size and shape as the candy. Could this be a piece of factory equipment? What you found is likely a metal dummy that was intentionally placed in randomly selected bags to test Hershey's automated quality control systems. These dummies are used to verify that the metal detectors on the production line are working correctly. If one of these test pieces ended up in a retail package, it may indicate a malfunction or oversight in the system, which raises concerns about the possibility of other foreign objects making it into consumer products.